Well, hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe. Thanks for tuning in to Rosenfield 10, where I cover our beloved Bless You Boys in black and gold, the New Orleans Saints. Are you a Who Dat fan? If you're a Who Dat fan, subscribe to this channel. I love the Saints as much as you do. Think of me as a friend or a coworker, and when you see me, we're going to talk about the Saints. So subscribe to my channel. When you see a video, you get to hear what I'm thinking, and then let me know in the comments what you think. I respond to my comments. And today we're going to talk about who is actually the weakest link on the New Orleans Saints football team right now. I proclaimed in the video I just recorded that Cesar Ruiz was without a doubt the weakest link on the team. And when I was thinking about weakest link, I was thinking about starters and who are we actually going to improve at starter. We always look at positions of need and we kind of, you know, we have an understanding of why. It's typically because of certain players. And going into free agency, guard was the number one position of need because we didn't have a starter at left guard and we have a pretty weak starter at right guard. So we address guard in free agency. That's great. Sambo. And Sam. He's always by my feet. And so we address left guard, but I'm thinking Cesar Ruiz is the weakest link as far as the starters go. And then I started thinking about the offense. I started thinking about the defense. And so I present the question to you, the Saints fan. Who or what is the weakest link on the Saints right now when we talk about position of need? Let's look at the roster and then I'll tell you what I think. So we'll pull up the offense first and I'll show you the big board here. And if you want to pause the video and look at it before coming up with your determination. But I'm thinking here on offense, when I'm looking at these starters, the weakest link, and okay, so we're going to include depth here too. So I'll give you some individual players who I think are weakest link, and then we'll also talk about positions that require some depth as weak links as well. So all right, so I think the weakest link here at starter, number one, guard, right guard, Cesar Ruiz. I think that's a position that can improve the quickest. Number two would be wide receiver Devon Vele, and I have a lot of faith in his ability, but this is not only the fact that he's unproven, but you could probably improve on the talent level there if you address it a certain way, like high in the draft. And another reason I highlight Vele as a weak link is his injury history. But really, at this point, you're just grasping. I think Cesar Ruiz is the weak starter, and everybody else after that, we're okay. A weak link would be, in my opinion, Kendre Miller. The same reasons he can't stay healthy. Great player when he's on the field, but Miller specifically can't stay healthy. Now we've already got a new running back in Travis Achan, so and then it all depends on how Kamara performs. You could say Kamara is a weak link here. We've addressed running back, so I'm going to say Kendre Miller's a weak link here. Kamara being your number two, whether he stays or goes, chances are he'll go, and at that point, you're kind of looking for perhaps a number two running back. Maybe that would be a better way to label it instead of Kendre Miller or Alvin Kamara being a weak link. How about just backup running back being a weak link? Up in the air, kind of, sort of. You kind of grasping at this point on the offense because we're pretty good on offense. We're pretty set up after free agency on offense. Number four, weak link for me on offense would be center Eric McCoy because of the injuries. Great player when he's on the field, but stays injured. So you've got Vele, Miller, and McCoy all on my list of weakest links on offense for the Saints because of their injury history. The number 5 weakest link here would be tight end Jawan Johnson because I think you could improve as far as run blocker. But like I've said in other videos, you would have to get one of the best tight ends in the league to improve on that. Right. No, that was awful. My cat's being bad. Uh, okay, so, all right, so there you go, offense. Now, that's the way I'm looking at it. I'll put the offense here for a second. Cesar Ruiz is the starter you have to replace. No, we can go. We can go a season with him and we'll struggle. And there's a potential if you don't address wide receiver or center, you might have some issues there with injury history of Vele and McCoy. And Miller's a big issue too. You've got some pieces at running back now, but as far as depth goes on the offense, I think the weakest link at the position group of what needs to be addressed is backup center. That's something we haven't gotten yet, and that's something we desperately need. Not only is, you know, uh, McCoy isn't a weak link, he's just injured all the time. So perhaps I shouldn't say McCoy's a weak link. We need depth at center, big time. And we could use some depth at wide receiver. I would say that as a position group would be something we could focus on, whether you're improving on Vele as a starter or not. The depth at wide receiver is kind of unproven. The next weak link, as far as depth at a position group on the offense, to me would be tight end. Oh, you've got Noah Fant now to go with Jawan Johnson, great, but you still have pretty much nothing after that. And then offensive tackle would be my fourth position to address as far as depth goes. A weak link as far as depth goes. Offensive tackle's pretty weak. So as far as depth goes, we need a backup center. We could use some depth at wide receiver and tight end and offensive tackle. So let's look at the defense and talk about the weakest links there. Pulling up the big board on defense. Oh, it's so nice to see Chris Rump back on the team. We've got some depth at edge rusher now, at least a little bit. I think Chris Rump in a heavy rotation would be a pretty productive guy. He was number 4 on the depth chart last year, and he did pretty good. So he's back on the team along with Cedric Ellis, who can highlight at edge. Of course, I've got Ellis there as the starting middle linebacker. The biggest weakness, the weakest link at starter for defense, well, the options are a little more obvious here, in my opinion. Number one, starting with who the hell's going to be our nickelback? I don't know who's playing nickel right now, and until we figure it out, I'm going to say that's the number one weak link on this team. We don't have a starting nickel. Now, maybe we do. Maybe it's Jonas Sanker. If that's the case, then you're going to have to focus on better depth at safety. I look at Julian Blackman as an injury waiting to happen. And since Blackman's going to be presumably part of a rotation at safety, then I'm not too concerned about the depth at safety. You still got Justin Reed and Jonas Sanker. But if Sanker becomes our nickelback, then safety depth becomes a high priority, and a weak link here would be Julian Blackman, being that he can't stay healthy. But for right now, I'm just going to consider it nickelback starter as the weakest link on this defense. Number 2, as far as starters go, defensive end Bryan Bresee. To me, the weakest link. I didn't see much of anything I liked last year. And number 3 weakest link on this team would be the other defensive end, Nathan Shepard. If you're going to improve at starter on anybody on this defense right now, you address nickelback, and then after that, what are you attacking? Are you going to tell me Pete Werner or Quincy Riley are worse players than Nathan Shepard and Bryan Bresee? I don't think so. I think nickelback is the number one weakest link on this defense, and after that, your starting defensive line across the board. Bryan Bresee would be number 2. Nathan Shepard would be number 3. Davin Gotchaw, to me, would be number 4. then I might consider your Pete Werner. I would actually put Quincy Riley as a weaker link than even Pete Werner. As far as starters go, I like Riley, so I'm pretty good. But, we could definitely use some depth at cornerback. So there's your defense right there. Yeah, you need a nickelback. You need an entire new starting defensive line, as far as I'm concerned. You can at least improve. You can improve on all three of them. Because Godshaw is a retirement waiting to happen. Brian Bresee is a borderline bust. I'm not sure if we should re-sign him or not. Oh, he's had his moments in Dennis Allen's defense. I got to see a lot this year from Bresee. And we're not going to give him that fifth year option this year, so he's going to have to play out his fourth year and try to earn a contract. But I'm serious. Brian Bresee, Davin Godshaw, Nathan Shepard. You can improve on that. And then I would say Quincy Riley would be the weak link after that. But I really like Riley. The depth behind him is concerning to me. I think the number one depth problem for this team would probably be at edge. Even though we just got Chris Rump, you're still missing Cam Jordan. So Chris Rump was our number 4. Right now, he'd be our number 3. I'm still thinking you kind of want to address edge in the draft and then have another piece there. I'm going to say, as far as depth goes, the weakest link, the weakest position group here would be edge as far as depth. And the cornerback depth right after that. You get your nickelback situation figured out. I don't like Isaac Yiadom being our number 3 guy, and I don't like on the outside. And, I kind of figure him and Quincy Riley might be around the same talent level. I'm hoping Riley's a lot better. Riley played great last year. Isaac Yiadom had a little bit of time to play last year. He played awful. But he could be a lot better in this defense given the chance. I'm going to say cornerback depth is pretty damn important. Edge rusher depth, followed by cornerback depth. And then after that, I still want depth at defensive line. Yeah, if you go ahead and replace all 3 of the starters and these 3 starting defensive linemen become your depth, then you're pretty good at depth. But I've got to mention defensive line. And then DB in general, it all depends on how we handle nickel. If you put Sanker as your starting nickel, you're still going to want a backup nickel. But then you're going to be lacking a little bit of depth at safety. And then, if Quincy Riley's our nickel, or, however it goes, whoever plays nickel, you're going to have to supplement into the DB room, for depth. So you need a starting nickel. You also really need a backup nickel until we know what's going on with nickel. Whew. So there you go. I'll pull up the quick list I made once again. On offense, the weakest link would be Cesar Ruiz, Devon Vele, Kendre Miller, Eric McCoy, Jawan Johnson. That's the way I look at it. Mostly for Vele, Miller, and McCoy, it's availability and their injury history, which leads to the needs of the depth on offense. Backup center, depth at wide receiver, depth at tight end, and I think offensive tackle depth would be pretty important for this team to address. On defense, the weakest links, in my opinion, you need a nickelback starter. You also have some weak links on the defensive line. Brian Bresee, Nathan Shepard, Davin Godshaw, and Quincy Riley would have to be the fifth weakest link as a starter. But I like Riley as a starter. I'd focus more on that cornerback depth. You need edge depth. You need cornerback depth. I'd like some defensive line depth. And then the DB depth, depending on how we handle nickelback. So there you go. That's my video presenting all of my options for the weakest links for the Saints. I've shown you the offense and the defense in this video, so you let me know in the comments what you think the weakest link is. And this will get us a long way towards addressing who we should actually get in the draft. And of course, that position of need video will be coming out next month for me. right before the draft, biggest positions of need. This is more along the lines of that too. The weakest link. Let me know what you think the weak link is. And then whatever that is, maybe that's the area we need to go. Now, I'm not saying because Cesar Ruiz is the weakest link, the Saints should draft guard with the eighth overall pick. I'm not necessarily saying that. But those are your weak links. It's food for thought. I'm Joe. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10 for more videos like this. Comment, and I do respond to my comments. Let's have a conversation, Who Dat family. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Who Dat?